There we go. All right. Hi. It's good to see everybody's faces. I want to lean in for a second here. Hmm. So Erika and I are doing a little tour of the koans here. We've got a couple each that we're going to explore together tonight. I'm just setting a little timer so I don't go over. The first one, I really just want to jump in, and the connection between the four koans we're looking at, my hope is that that connection, this thread, will become more clear as we go. So the first one is 7 wise women in the charnel ground, and I'm just going to read the first little part of it. This is China, 9th century, and if you have the book, it's page 44. 7 wise sisters planned a spring journey. One of them said, "Sisters, instead of going to a park to enjoy the spring flowers, let's go together to see the charnel grounds." The other said, "That place is full of decaying corpses. What is it such a good place for?" The first woman replied, "Let's just go. Very good things are happening there." When they arrived, one of them pointed to a corpse and said, "There's a person's body. Where has the person gone?" "What?" another said. "What did you say?" And with that, all 7 sisters were immediately enlightened. And the koan goes on to say a little bit that the god Indra comes to visit and to sort of celebrate their awakening and ask them, anything you want, you got it. And they're like, "Nope, we're good. We don't need anything else." And so the question here is, what happened? And how is it that they don't need anything else? Maybe this is one reading of it. And I asked myself immediately when I read this, well, what is realized? What do we see when we see the corpses? And the first thing feels pretty evident. There's some impermanence happening here. There's some realization of this self as process, this relating to life as process and being as process. And there's also just the sisters in spring, the spiritual friends. That's like something I feel so blessed to have here with all of you, these deep, meaningful Dharma friendships, these spiritual friendships that carry us. And where it carried them was right into the heart of it, right into the charnel grounds on this beautiful spring day. And we're having one today where I am, maybe where you are. Flowers are blooming, and here they go into the charnel ground instead. And it just says to me, a phrase I really love is this, maybe the relief that we're seeking is in turning towards the avoided pain. Maybe the very nourishment and ease that we're looking for is right there if we can just turn and face the very pain that we've been working so hard to avoid. Some of the commentary here that felt meaningful to me. She addresses, the commentary is by Bonnie Miotai Treese, and I hope I'm saying her name close, if not correct. She says, "But the story of the wise woman also reminds us that facing what needs to be faced, walking towards the charnel grounds, can strike us as basically unpleasant. Aren't there sweeter ways to spend the day? But that our wise woman turns aversion on its head." And I think this is something we can study in ourselves, like when we feel it, when we know it in our bodies, when contraction is happening, when avoidance is happening. These wise women turn it on its head. The place where release from suffering of decay will be realized might just be exactly where we least expect it. And she goes on to say, what changed when they saw the corpses? With their minds settled, they became, in a sense, beings who were no longer turning from pain or mystery. What then occurs? What becomes available? Something invulnerable, something inarguable. And as I played with this, I also had a sense that, that the Sandokai was happening here, that there was this tension of relative and absolute, there's this gloriousness of the spring day, this ultimate dimension. Sometimes Thich Nhat Hanh speaks of the ultimate dimension, this oneness and beauty here. And then there's also the relative, there's our individual lives. And can we move more graciously between these positions of contraction into the relative, it's too tight, and the opening into the ultimate dimension, the oneness, the spring day. And even right now, I feel, let me see my time. Yeah, I feel encouraged to say we can do it right now, like even just checking in, like scanning through the body. And is there a place where you're contracting? You know, can you feel that that's there? My excitement makes me have it in my chest. And can you keep scanning through and looking and finding a place where there's ease that's here right at the same time? Like maybe just the palms of the hands or the soles of the feet. So we're holding both of these states constantly, right? They're always here. And then moving into the second one. This is Ling Zhao's Shining Grasses. Something similar, I think, is happening in this second koan. And if you have the book, it's on page 271. And I'll just give you, it's short, I'm just going to read the whole thing. This is 8th century China, and it's the Peng family. And I love the Peng family because they're lay people like me, like most of us. Layman Peng was sitting in his thatched cottage one day, studying the sutras. Difficult, 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 he suddenly exclaimed, like trying to store 10 bushels of sesame in the top of a tree. And then his wife disagrees. So we get a couple in argument here. Easy, 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 his wife, laywoman Peng answered. It's like touching your feet to the floor when you get out of bed. And then the daughter Ling Zhao says, neither difficult nor easy. It's like the teachings of the ancestors shining on the 100 grass tips. It's like the teaching of the ancestors shining on the 100 grass tips. And I love this for a million reasons. One of them is it's the child that comes forward with the wisdom, right? With these unconditioned, unclouded eyes, that she's the one, not the two adults in the room. But can we bring that childlike quality, that unconditioned mind forward that's in touch with wisdom? And can we see the Dharma coming in these myriad places? The grass tips, the child's wisdom, the charnel grounds, and the spring day. And then again, I have the flavor here of Sandokai, where difficult, difficult, this contracting in, and the easy, easy, the expanding and opening. And actually the daughter saying it's both, it's neither, it's so much more. It's all of the ancestors' voices coming forward on those tips of the grass. I think I wanted to say, Jisha Warner's commentary here, she says, Ling Zhao invites us to fulfill our humanity through both streams, the difficult and the easy, the spring day and the charnel grounds, to not turn away from either. I know in my own life, I get a little leaning in towards the spring day. I can get even stuck there, maybe the God realms. I remember when my daughter was very young, wanting to just dwell in that place of innocence and childhood and fairies and sunbeams, and so much resistance to leaving. That's when I started practicing with Chris, and she actually had said at one point, Chelsea, you have to come down off the mountaintop. We lived really rurally, like in a mountain area. And boy, I did not want to enter the whole world. I wanted to stay there. And fairyland, it's like the getting caught in the siren's call, right? And then in the same way, tracking within myself how I can get just as stuck in the charnel ground. I can get just as stuck, contracted in grief and despair. But it's not the whole picture, right? It's so much more, like we're hearing from the child in this story. So it goes beyond the dualities of good and bad, relative and absolute. Mm. Mm. And I had another little bit here I wanted to share. Mm. Yeah, I think there's a little bit in this commentary. I can't find it on my notes. Maybe this just like returning to the way that the Dharma shows up in so many places. It's not just in the spring day, or it's not just in the charnel ground. It's not just in the despair or the expanded states, but it's, the old sense saying, like, it's everywhere. I just really feel it's more and more as I live my life that that's true. It's everywhere that I'm turning, and I can't step outside of that net. Mm. Mm. Yeah, and I think here it's just maybe like I want to have us come back into our bodies, like coming back in and seeing if there's a sense here of both of those present at one time. A sense of something that is holding grief, something that's holding sadness. And can we also find a place where the spring grasses are existing, where there's some resource available, like opening to holding them both. Yeah, and with that, Erika, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, hello everyone, and thank you all. Thank you, Chelsea. That was so beautiful. It's a hard act to follow. Yeah. So I'm going to talk about not quite as sweet as the spring grasses, but I think also will connect with the charnel grounds. I'm going to start out with Eshun's Deep Thing. It's Japan, 14th century, on page 114. And I'll read it. I'll read the story. Is fairly short. So it goes like this. Eshun was a nun. I always say that. She was a nun at the monastery at Saijoji. The abbot of Saijoji wanted to send a message to the abbot of the great temple of Engakuji, which was known for its rough treatment of outsiders. None of the monks from Saijoji dared to go. Only the nun Eshun was willing to volunteer. When the Engakuji monks saw her walk through the main gate, one of them rushed forward, raised his robes to expose himself, and said, "This monk's thing is 3 feet long. How about it?" Eshun. It's oops. You got me. I think she did it on purpose. It's the postman. It's the postman. So we're just going to hold on one moment for the postman to carry on. All right. So anyway, right in the middle of the most dramatic part. So so as they saw her walk through the main gate, one of them rushed forward, raised his robes to expose himself, and said, "This monk's thing is 3 feet long. How about it?" Eshun calmly lifted her robes and said, "This nun's thing is infinitely deep," dropped her robes, and continued down the corridor unaccosted. So I'll read it to you again. Eshun was a nun at the monastery of Saijoji. The abbot of Saijoji wanted to send a message to the abbot of the great temple Engakuji, which was known for its rough treatment of outsiders. None of the monks at Saijoji dared to go. Only the nun Eshun was willing to volunteer. When the Engakuji monks saw her walk through the main gate, one of them rushed forward, raised his robes and said, "This monk's thing is 3 feet long. How about it?" Eshun calmly lifted her robes and said, "This nun's thing is infinitely deep." She dropped her robes and continued down the corridor unaccosted. So I was attracted to this koan, or I like this story for a couple of reasons. And one is it's just so raw, it's just, there are not that many koans, especially, the traditional ones that even deal with sexuality, because, everyone was celibate monks. And I think there was kind of a denial that the bodies even existed, and the other thing that I'm really love about this one is, or I admire, her presence, because if that were happening to me, 9 times out of 10, when something like this pops up, I just stand there, staring like a deer in the headlights. And then, think about a couple of days later, I can come up with some, clever answer. But so to have that kind of, presence is something I aspire to. And here's some of the reflection, Karen Sundheim's reflection. She says, "Enshun's understanding was immeasurable and deep. So the monk boasted of 3-foot member. She didn't fall prey to comparison or shock or provocation. What was that when her mind and body held everything? Who has practiced the Dharma who didn't emerge from a woman's vagina? Didn't the monk realize that he too had come into the world from a woman's womb?" And I just love, there's a lot of ways to look at it too. When you look at, she says, she's infinitely deep. It reminds us of Prajnaparamita, of the dark mother of the womb that, we are all from. And she's able to walk unafraid, unashamed, not hiding who she is, what she is as a woman, as a being, and can say, "Here I am, infinitely deep." It's like when she says this nun's thing is infinitely deep, she could be saying this person's being is infinitely deep. And I related also, well, I related also to the charnel ground, where pointing to the corpse, they say, "There's the body, but where's the person gone?" And you could say it about her too, or she has to has that understanding in order to be able to do that, that here I am fully embodied, here I am a woman and nun, here I am walking into this monastery, and I'm infinitely deep. Where has the person gone? Here's the body, where has the person gone? Because the person is vast beyond description, inconceivable. Yeah. And so the other, well, another point, kind of going back in the beginning of this koan, is what a monastery that was known for rough treatment of visitors. I mean, were they practicing kindness and compassion? It sounds much more like a samurai training ground than, I don't know that I'd really want to practice there, and what it also made me think about, and the women, the strength of being, maybe the strength of women in general, but the strength of whether you're a woman or a man, or knowing who you are and accepting who you are as you are, short of tall or thinner, fat, or whatever is part of it. And then there's a great story that I was thinking of from women in Ghana. There was, I think it happened a number of years ago. But it was a delegation. There'd been a lot of warring and fighting in Liberia and Ghana and West Africa. And they were trying to negotiate some peace deal, some treaty to end the conflicts. And they kept breaking down. They weren't able to do it. And so this delegation of 200 women showed up at the place where they were doing negotiations. And the story is that they blocked the doors and the windows and would not allow any of the negotiators to leave until they had come up with a peace deal. And, they just wouldn't let them, they just stood there. And then, so the negotiators were kind of shamed into they had to continue on. And if things broke down, the women would threaten to take off all their clothes, which I think is so wonderful. It's like, we're going to stand here naked until you get it right. We're going to give our whole selves to you. And because we're your mothers and your grandmothers and your aunties, and you were born of us. And so you will make a peace agreement. And we're going to stay here until you do. I just, that's the kind of power in I think in that fully acceptance of ourselves, knowing that we're greater than our small selves. There were a few examples of that, I think, in Africa, of just saying, we're going to shame you by staying here. And so let's see what else. What are we doing? So I'll move on. This second one that I was enjoying, I'm really just gonna sort of touch on it and read it as a closing because just because of the poetry is so beautiful. And I think it also relates to the story of the shining grasses and kind of the wholeness aspect. This is Zhayang's Earth, China, 17th century. This is page 241. A monk arrived. The monk asked Master Ziyang Chenru, 30 blows, are they the actions of a man or an enlightened being? Ziyang replied, as long as the fellow isn't beaten to death. The monk said, when you speak, the congregation assembles like clouds. In the end, who is this great hero among women? Ziyang said, each and every person has the sky over their head. Each and every one has the earth under their feet. The monk gave a shout, cuts! If you don't know what else to say in Zen, you can always say cuts. So Ziyang said, what is the point of recklessly shouting like that? The monk bowed respectfully, and Ziyang said, the Dharma does not rise up alone. It can't emerge without reliance on the world. If I take up the challenge of speaking, I must surely borrow the light and the dark, the form and the emptiness of the mountains and the hills and the great earth, the call of the magpies and the cries of the crows. The water flows, the flowers blossom, brilliantly teaching without ceasing. In this way, there is no restraint. Thank you. Yeah, so, well, we have a good amount of time. we can do groups and dyads, and Chelsea and I, well, Chelsea came up with this. I really like it, so I'm just gonna read exactly what you said. So a good question for us would be charnel grounds, grass tips, the wisdom of children, Zion's earth, and the deep thing. Where are you finding the Dharma? So where do we find the Dharma in our myriad, inexpressible, inconceivable life?